Wargamers. Purple Druid presents Wargame Culture, and today, oh my goodness, we are going to examine some of the rules for chainmail here. And there's been a lot of discussion. I've already written a big Substack about this, but we are going to go through a couple of different scenarios here and show how and why we may have missed the important rule in 3rd edition chainmail that you need to fight multiple rounds of melee in a single turn. But first, I want to do a mea culpa because I taught myself how to play chainmail with 2nd edition. Because I didn't know it was available on DM's Guild in the 3rd edition, and I found this online and printed it out. And there's a very important bit here in post-melee morale, step 4. It says both sides total the scores arrived at steps 1 through 3 above, and the side with the lower total reacts as follows. And then it gives a list of reactions. And there are 2 that are marked with asterisk. And those asterisks say retreat is done immediately with the backs to the enemy, and rout is done immediately with the backs to the enemy. So this is how I taught myself to play. And that being said, with melee continues or falling back, those are perfectly reasonable ideas because they're in good order and those count as moves and not retreat or rout, because they resemble other rule sets that I'm familiar with. Now, when I switched to 3rd edition, I will admit that I did not read it as carefully as I should have, because the important part here, post-melee morale, step 4, both sides now total the scores arrived at in steps 1 through 3 above, and the side with the lower total must immediately react as follows. So immediately has been moved from just rout and surrender, or rout and retreat, to the beginning. So immediately now includes all of these steps, and therefore the 0 to 19 melee continues becomes a loop until one of these other results are achieved. Now, there's another reason that we may have missed these, and that is because, as you can see here, most of the chainmail battles that we see on the YouTubes or talk about on the internet are dealing with Dungeons and Dragons encounter tables. And for example, orcs, you can encounter 30 to 300. Well, 300 orcs at 1 to 20 is only 15 figures. So if this represents the orcs, these 15 cubes, that's 300. So that's all you think you need. But if you look at some pictures, I'm going to move this table just a little bit. If you look at some pictures from the old days where the grandfathers of our hobby are playing chainmail, you can see very large units, upwards of 40 to 60 or 80 figures. And so that is where the 0 to 19 melee continues becomes an important factor. Because when you have the larger units, you get smaller differences in the morale score. So we're going to work through a couple of examples here. I have this scratch paper. I should have a whiteboard, but I don't know where it is. So we're going to use this paper. And we're going to work through a couple examples. So what we've done here, these are 15 millimeter cubes. And just so everyone because I know I'll get this question. These cubes I get from Dollar General, or perhaps Dollar Tree, depending on where you are. And it's $1.25 for 36 cubes. They're wooden craft cubes. They're 15 millimeters on a side. They are not the best quality. They're not really consistent in the type of wood. I don't know if they're offcuts or what. But anyway, they're cheap. And when you have enough cubes, you can literally play any game. So for this example, we're going to do heavy infantry versus heavy infantry, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to force a melee continues result. And they are starting 18 inches apart. This ruler is marked in 15 centimeter increments because the bases are supposed to be the amount you move. And again, that's a wild generalization, but it will make this easier for demonstration purposes. Now, before we go any further, the heavy foot have a morale rating of 5. So keep that in mind, because both of them will have a morale rating of 5, because what we're trying to do is create a situation where we force a melee continuation. So let's see if we can do that. Now, the heavy foot have a move of 9 inches and a charge of 12. They also have a missile range of 3 if they're armed with throwing axes or throwing spears, such as Vikings or Saxons. We're not going to do that. Again, we're just trying to simplify this and work through the process so that we can figure out precisely how this rule is supposed to work. So, 18 inches away, theoretically, if they both move, they could bump into each other in combat in the first turn. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do pre-ordering to simulate 2 players. So the white die that I have here will represent the gray forces, of which there are 14. The red forces have 15, and I did that for a reason that we'll see in just a moment. So whoever rolls higher is going to declare a charge, and whoever rolls lower will just move their 9 inches. And that will also become apparent in just a moment. So 5 for the red. So the red are going to declare a charge, and the gray are just going to move. So movement is simultaneous. So we're going to move these 9 inches. And then we're going to charge these. And yes, I should have put them on trays, but I did not. 9 inches. So now you can see that they have come together in the middle of the field, and this is where we will do the actual melee. So, on our chart, heavy foot versus heavy foot is 1 die per man, and a 6 will be the casualty. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each side will get 5 dice, and we'll remove 1 cube for each casualty. The gray get 1 6, and the red get 1 6. All right. So, fewer casualties. The absolute difference times a d6. the number of casualties on each side is 1, so there's no difference. Now, more survivors. The gray started with 14, they're down to 13. And the red started with 15, they're down to 14. So they have 1. So the red have a 1 so far for their score. Now the gray have 13 times 5, which is 80. And the red have 14 times 5. Did I do that right? No, that's 75. This is what happens when you do things live, right? 13 times 5 is 50 plus 15, 65. Cheapers. And 14 times 5 is 70. Wow. Okay, so red has a total score of 71. And gray has a 65. That is a difference of 6. Gray loses by 6. And according to our chart, melee should continue. So, melee will immediately continue. However, that being said, there's another rule. And that rule is here under miscellaneous melee information number 4. After the first round of melee, excess troops, figures unopposed by an enemy directly before them, from the flanks or from rear ranks, may be moved so as to overlap the enemy formations, flanks, and even rear if movement at 1/2 normal will allow. So what that means is that, first of all, troops in the second rank will move up to fill the hole in the first rank. And then these troops that are not directly in front of the other can move up to a 1/2 move, which would be 4.5 inches, to the flanks. So now the second round of combat will be fought. However, we're going to use a different number of dice now. The red side is going to get 5 dice versus these, and then an additional die for each of those, fighting against the troops on the side. The gray will get these 5 dice plus 4 additional dice, because these guys don't get to fight in 2 directions. And now we're rolling. And we're looking for 6s, and we don't get any. We don't get any 6s at all, so there are no casualties. And we're just going to do the absolute difference once again in terms of survivors, and then both survivors times their morale rating. So we're back at 65 and 70 for a total of 6 once again. Now, I did forget one thing, and I was trying to be careful, but I get so excited. Each side will get 1 fatigue for moving and or charging. Then they're going to get a fatigue for their first round of melee. And then they'll get a fatigue for their second round of melee. And so at this rate, they're going to become fatigued at the same rate, which will bump them both down to light infantry if this continues. Now, this being said, technically speaking, these troops here are unopposed, and these troops here are unopposed. And so theoretically, they could move and attempt to engage. So let's take a look at that. This one can move here. And this one can move here. We'll move these guys over here. My board is rough. And then we have 1, 2, well, 2 1/4, 3, 4. So they won't have enough to reach. 1, 2, 3 1/4, 4. So they'll actually be about there. So they won't really have enough either to get there. So that's what that's going to look like. Let's go ahead and move these guys as well. We'll put them there. And we'll put them there. All right, so this is what it's going to look like for round 3. And again, this is going to change the number of dice we roll. So gray is going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Which is the same number as they had before. And red is going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then 9. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, now we got some casualties. So gray is going to cause 2 casualties. So let's take these off right here. And red is going to cause 3 casualties. So, you know what? It matters. We're going to take 1 off here. We're going to take 1 off here. And then we'll take 1 off here. And it matters because some can follow back up and some cannot. But let's take a look at what we have here. So, red has suffered fewer casualties. The absolute difference is 1 times a d6. And that's 1. So red will get 1 point for fewer casualties. More survivors. We have 5, 10, 12 for red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Red has more survivors. They're going to get 2. And then both sides, survivors times the morale rating of 5. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Black gets 50. And red has 60. Now, red has 63 points. And gray has 50. That's a difference of 13. But because we're below 20 fighters on both sides, we double that. So that becomes a 26. And for a 26, the losing side will fall back 1/2 move in good order. So that means that all of the gray cubes will fall back 1/2 move. And also everybody gets another fatigue point. So let's do that movement. Okay, now Gray gets another fatigue point. Gray has moved and done 3 melees. And then moved again. So they have 4. Red has charged and done 3 melees. So they have, they have 5, they have 4. So according to the rules, the gray is actually at fatigue. And so now they will suffer -1 to this roll if they have fewer casualties. And they will have -1 to their morale rating, which will make it a 4. Also, it says that chargers must complete their charge if applicable, but that only happens when the chargers win the first round of combat. So now we have basically completed this combat, and this turn is going to be over. And so we'll start a new turn, turn 2, at this point. All right, and now on turn 2, this is where it gets really exciting, because on turn 2, this unit is disorganized, and so they must move back into some semblance of order, whereas the red unit is free to do what they would like. And since moves are simultaneous, the red unit can declare a charge or move, which they will declare a charge because there's just no way around it. And while this unit is reforming, this unit can charge into them. And according to the movement rules, when a unit is changing formation, if they are attacked, they will count as flanked. So what that means is, even though they fought 3 rounds of combat and they are fatigued, because they're, which will reduce them to fighting as light infantry, they will actually fight as heavy infantry with their bonus. The gray unit is fatigued and they will count as light infantry. So that's going to change our calculus. Even though they have the same number of dice, 5 versus 5, heavy foot versus light foot is going to be 1 die per man, and a 5 or 6 is a kill. And then conversely, the gray unit is light foot versus heavy foot, and that's 1 die per 2 men. So unfortunately, they're only going to get 2 dice and a 6 kills. So now we've got a real situation. Can you see this? There. So red causes 1 casualty and gray causes 0. And now we're going to go through our absolute difference. Move my stupid markers. Absolute difference is 1 times a d6. 3. So on round 4, or turn 2, we get 3 times 1, 3 points. More survivors. 12 versus 9. That's 3 more. And survivors times the morale rating. The morale rating is now 4 because they're both fatigued. 12 times 4 is 48. 9 times 4 is 36. That's a difference of 12. No. That's a difference of 18, which we double to become 36. And once again, that means move back 1/2 move in good order. Now, that is the first round of combat in a new turn. The charging unit is victorious. They charged 4.5 inches. They get to continue their charge and attack again. Now, what that means is, by definition, there's 4.5 inches between them, so they'll be able to move forward and attack again. Now, this time they're not attacking as though in a flank, so it'll both be light infantry versus light infantry. Due to the fatigue. And it'll be 4 dice versus 4 dice with 6s. And this time the gray get 1 and the red do not. So for turn 2, round 2, the absolute difference is 1 times a d6. 2. So 2 points for gray. More survivors. Well, red still has more survivors. 11 against 9, that's 2. Nine times 4 is still 36, for a total of 38. 11 times 4 is 44, for a total of 46. That's a difference of 8, which we double to 16, and we're back again to the melee continues. So you can see how this little change makes an awful lot of difference in how these battles can be conducted. Primarily because there's going to be no lapping around this time. And so the next round will be fought at 5 dice versus 5 dice. And once again, gray gets 1 casualty. And so with those kind of numbers, it looks like we're going to repeat again and again and again. So I find this fascinating in how this small change really can turn these melees into a slog. Unless I've done something wrong, and I'm not sure I have. I've done this a few times trying to practice to make this video. We'll take one away from here. Fewer casualties, absolute difference for round 3. Fewer casualties on the gray side, that's 2 points. More survivors, 10 to 9, that's 1 point. 9 times 4 is 36. And 10 times 4 is 40. 41 to 38. That's a difference of 3, which is doubled to 6. So again, we're back in. Melee continues. And so we'll need to move up. And fight again. All right. So that, I believe, is what chainmail melee combat is supposed to look like. Now, here's another important consideration, and I'm going to wrap this up because we're at about 30 minutes already. This is being done in a vacuum. In a real battle, there will be more units on either side. There will be missile units. Those will change the calculus. Those will change the number of figures, first of all, that get into battle. And if there is, for example, another unit over here that is within 3 inches, this unit can join the combat. And that will make, I believe, a very, very big difference. Also, at the beginning of turn 2, the red force could have sat still and recovered from their fatigue while the gray force was reorganizing, and archers on the red side could have pelted the gray unit because they weren't moving and removed some more of their force. And then we'd have to take a look at, for sure, we'd have to take a look at excess casualties. So, but there you go. That is the battle. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment down below. There's a whole area for that. So thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Thanks also to Mr. Wargaming, R-Dubs, Boss, Border Baronies, who else? Clerics Wear Ringmail. There's a whole bunch of folks that I've been chatting with over the past few days. I know I'm leaving somebody out, and I apologize. Mr. Hampton, thank you so much for helping sort this out, and I hope this has made it a little more clear as to how this is supposed to work. Once again, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and keep on gaming.